All right, welcome everyone to another live stream brought to you by Nuka Vault Readiness. Glad you could join us this evening. I'm your host, C, also known as KI5 or the Vault Guy. Room's still a little bit empty, so we'll give it a few more minutes here. See if anyone else comes in. Try to position this a little bit better for y'all so we get Mr. Pluto and anything else in shot there and leave our awesome little mascot there. So anyway, whoever's in the room, hope you're doing well this evening. Tonight's stream is also going to be just another general chat. Anyone's got any questions or anything like that, you're more than welcome to put them up in chat. Let's see if we can get it a little bit more focused here with. All right, KJ5HTK, Mr. Mike is here with us this evening. Good to have you, Mr. Mike. And also, I know we're still early on in the stream, but I want to thank everyone who has been watching the channel. We, in the last few days, have passed over 900 subs on the channel. So again, great appreciation for everybody. And again, if anyone's got any questions, anything at all, go ahead and throw them in chat. Okay. So I don't have anything in particular I was going to go over, but the most recent video I did, I went over that you can unlock a Baofeng UV5R, which happens to be the radio that you see standing next to Pluto there. And then when you unlock one, it technically will then allow the radio to transmit outside of its um, frequency range that it is intended to do. So the Baofeng UV5Rs are manufactured to transmit on the 2 meter and 70 centimeter amateur radio bands. But by unlocking it, you are able to then transmit out of those bands and just into the UHF frequencies of FRS and GMRS. There we go. That should be better. I think the light and everything is kind of creeping up and moving every so often. Anyway, so when you do that, you are then able again to transmit in the FRS and the GMRS frequencies, which would be um, then allowing you to talk to radios such as that little Dural you'll see over there on the left, the blue radio. That's an FRS radio. And for those who really don't have any walkie-talkies or are kind of brand new to communication, FRS radio stands for Family Radio Service, and most of the time, those are going to be your little blister pack walkie-talkie radios that you can get from the store, your local big box store, sometimes hunting stores, such like that. They're very limited on power, and they are not made to transmit over great distances unless you are on flat open area between the two users. So, in the case that you would ever really want to use a UV5R to do that, I should tell you that you should only be doing that in an emergency situation, and that is because technically transmitting outside of what your radio is manufactured to do is against the use of the radio itself. Example, the says again the Baofeng transmits in the 2 meter 70 centimeter bands of the amateur radio service. That is all that the Baofeng should be used for. But again, I say if you do unlock it, it is able to transmit um, a little bit out of its intended use into the UHF spectrum, which will then cover those FRS and GMRS radios. So doing that is technically, from an amateur radio perspective, that is a misuse of the radio, therefore a misuse of its intended purpose. So you shouldn't do that. But if you've been with us for a while, or if you've seen at least a couple of our videos here, we're all about getting ready for those emergency situations, which is exactly the scenario that you would want to unlock that radio and use it to be able to talk to other radios like those. Because what it is doing is it's going out of the amateur radio spectrum or service rather into the both GMRS service and the FRS, which are again are their own respective classes that are covered and have guidelines according to the FCC. And brief momentary, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back. Apologies about that. Had to attend to something real quick. And for on screen here, for those who are not familiar or have not gotten into, again, radios overall in general, I am going to pull up a, a chart here. Make sure I can pull this back up again appropriately. Still haven't got used to all this interface, what they've done with the program. So let's see. All right, here we go. So GMRS radios, which stands for General Mobile Radio Service, is basically a radio that again it works on the same frequency as that Dural that you saw. The main difference being the antennas you can use with the GMRS radio and the output power, excuse me, of a and the output power between the two services. FRS again, um, those radios you usually get them again in blister packs. The antenna is attached. You cannot change out the antennas, and their power output is usually rated to, or excuse me, at max, I think 2 watts, if not half a watt. It really depends. Or excuse me, it does. It depends on the channel. Whereas GMRS has a higher power output, and at the same time, you can change antennas on certain models. So, and what you'll see here, I apologize, and I had that on small screen, so we're going to do this now. There we go. Hopefully that fixes it. So, right here, you this chart is going to show you that GMRS and FRS share channels. So 1 through 22, which is usually what a FRS covers, that is again covered by GMRS. But a GMRS radio also has extra channels that you can use for repeaters, just like they do in the amateur radio service. So what I found was that by again unlocking that Baofeng, you can talk to them, to those two services. Not technically allowed, but we are talking about emergency situations. So if you happen to be the only amateur operator in your group, or you're, what, put yourself in whichever scenario, and you happen to be carrying a Baofeng UV5R, and you needed to talk to anybody else that was um, maybe carrying a GMRS radio, or again had just some little blister radio like that, your you can now talk to them as well. It should be noted that there are other radios out there, at least amateur radios, that you can unlock, whether it is uh, via a simple push of a few buttons and turn the radio on, or it's through a software or a firmware update. I just have not. I haven't tinkered around with a lot of them to see if the unlocking on other models will do the same thing and get you in to the that UHF frequencies to talk to these other two service bands. I was actually talking to a fellow amateur operator last night, and I can't remember what model of Baofeng he was talking about, and he said that it already was able to receive other other major frequencies within like the VHF, the UHF band. I believe he said the top end was like 520 megahertz or something like that. And on the lower end, it would get 130, which if it's 130 megahertz and it's on AM, the AM side of radio, that should be the aviation air band, which they're making a lot of radios now that you can buy that already have that function. And there would be no reason that you'd have to unlock it. But I've seen the unlocking of that bow of this particular Baofeng before in several other videos. Decided to give it a try, and then again experimented with it myself, and it does work. And I thought, okay, definitely need to keep that one handy. And I've actually went ahead and unlocked a couple of my Baofengs, particular again this model right here, UV5R. Open them up and have them on GMRS, FRS, and anything else that I want to listen to. And um, there are still a few police departments and maybe fire departments out there, especially in smaller towns, that have their radios on analog. If you happen to be in one of those areas, as long as you can get the tone, maybe the FM tone information, you could definitely put those in as well and use your Baofeng as a receiver and just listen in. I think I mentioned this probably in the last live stream we had, that most police departments, most fire departments are on digital, and they're on what's called a trunking system, which means that they're encrypted. So unless you're listening, usually through a browser, a specific web page that it'll be all via internet. You won't be listening in to anything like that that's local. I see we still have a couple people in the room. I greatly appreciate y'all jumping in here. I know it's hump day. Probably not a lot going on, but for those that are here, appreciate you. All right. And if anyone's got any questions, feel free to go ahead and throw them in the chat. I'll be more than happy to answer them if I can. If I don't know the answer off the top of my head, we will find it out together. Also, if you are interested in getting into communications and maybe amateur radio is not your thing, I implore you to look at GMRS radios. There is a fee. You would have to go through and still get yourself a FRN number. I covered that on a previous live stream as well that you would have to register with the FCC, get your own FRN number. But the main difference between at least just on application and testing wise, the main difference between a GMRS and a amateur radio license is there is no testing for a GMRS licensure. You still pay $35, got to get your paperwork in order. But once you are assigned your call sign, you do get one of those, just like an amateur radio. Uh, the license extends to quite a bit of your family. It's immediate family, um, in-laws, stepchildren, and I believe it goes out to, I think, as far as niece and nephews, aunts and uncles. I think that's about where it stops. So immediate family and at least that far. So it'll cover a few people, especially for those who, you know, live within the same town, maybe opposite sides of the same town, the metro area. Um, it's a great licensure to have. I also have a GMRS license as well, and for at least around here, it covers everybody. So uh, if anyone needs anything, they can come over and grab a couple of my handhelds, and we're good to go. GMRS does have its own equipment. There is certain handy talkies that are made just for GMRS. There's certain mobile rigs that are made just for GMRS, and also antennas. So it doesn't seem like there's as much uh, gear and accessories for GMRS overall as there is compared to amateur radio. And I think it's fair to say that GMRS, I guess, as a whole, could be looked at as a hobby, especially if you are going to use it, maybe for ATVing, overlanding, hunting, camping, backpacking, that sort of thing. And it always becomes part of your gear that you take with you. Sure. I guess it could be a hobby, or at least, intertwined with a hobby, especially outdoor hobbies. But from what I could tell, there's really no experimentation aspect of it at all. And that's one thing that amateur radio has, is an experimentation um, outlet to it. GMRS and FRS are very specific. It is a service to have that is just communication strictly. England, Texas. All right. Glad to have you with us. I have both licenses. GMRS has gotten very popular with off road groups. I'm sorry, I will switch back to my main screen so if everyone wants to, we can see the chat here. Yes, it has. There's actually a great source on YouTube. If you haven't seen his videos, I highly suggest watching Not a Rubicon Productions. I believe his name is Randy. He is based out, I believe, in the California. I believe it's the California or Southern Nevada area. He's big on GMRS. That's actually how I got started. I got introduced into GMRS was watching his videos. But yeah, like I said, it's a great service to have, especially if you are just if you're just communications oriented where you want just that. Again, you don't want to have to deal with experimentation, and you don't want to have, somewhere between 10 and 50 ways to contact somebody. You just again want a point to point communication service. I suggest GMRS because again, gives you more power. You can have at least different antennas, certain other attachments. They're higher wattage radios for sure, compared to little FRS radios, which are great for family and kids. Don't get me wrong; they have their purpose. Uh, I personally, that this Duroc you'll see right there on the left, the blue one, I took it with me my last trip here. to the hill country in my state, and they worked great for my buddy and I while we were in the backcountry camping. As I think you know the what are those called, the vault toilets. I believe they're about point 0.2 of a mile away from our camp, and we were the only ones camping in the backcountry, and it was about a 2-mile hike back to the car. So they served us well for that purpose. I did have an amateur radio walkie with me out there just in case, something happens, but for basic hiking and camping, little FRS radios like that will work just fine. And as you can see there, if you're wondering about size as well, yes, that particular Baofeng, again, everyone knows of the UV5R is um is a smaller radio. It feels like a toy. It's very cheap plastic. But that Dural actually feels more like a toy. But surprisingly, it performed well. I also do have a video review of those, so they're great radios. Anglin, Randy, is the reason I got into radios. Okay, cool, very awesome. Glad you found his channel and that you actually got into communications watching him. I honestly could not tell you who the first person was that I watched. It's probably gonna be Josh, and I forget his call sign, but it's probably gonna be, yeah, Josh from Ham Radio Crash Course. He's gonna be the first guy I saw, on YouTube and started watching a lot, to get into amateur radio. Then I think a close second would be, Randy for, for the GMRS radios. All right, England got my tech and didn't make any contacts for a month, so I upgraded general. I enjoy doing POTA, but use GMRS more for the utility. Yeah, and like I said, that's exactly what GMRS is for. It is for utility. It has a purpose, and you are one a backup, I guess, a backup or a consistent comm system for activities like that. And again, amateur radio can do that for you too, but there's many facets of amateur radio. And again, there's somewhere between 10 and 100 ways to make contacts now. So I totally understand. I already know we're kind of like 30 something minutes in here to the stream, but I did not even ask for a 5x9, but I am going to assume everybody is hearing me uh, because I'm getting comments back about things I'm talking about. So I assume you can hear me. That would be a complete radio operator failure right there. And I've also noticed that GMRS, and I mean, I brought up just of course, just the hobbying aspect, or the, intertwining with hobbies and especially outdoor activities. Um, but it also seems GMRS. Okay, I'm gonna redact that for a second because I guess it depends on who you're listening to. But GMRS and amateur radio kind of almost are tit for tat when it comes to people that are more emergency oriented. I guess you could say, quote, prepper or preparedness oriented. Um, it really depends on who you listen to. There's, of course, some that say, of course, ham is or ham radio is gonna reign supreme because it's got HF capabilities. We're talking international talk, such like that. And then there's some that are of the mindset that a GMRS is enough because if it's for you and your group, your tribe, whatever the terminology is said content creator likes to use, they're they believe that's enough for them because since the radios are made with a bit more of a power output, and again, you can use upgraded antennas or even external antennas. They make plenty of GMRS antennas for cars. You know, they're mag mounted on your car, or you can I forget what the mount is called. I think it's called NMO MMNO mount. Um, Screw in that would go like on the hood of or not the hood, the near your trunk, kind of like the old like little CB whips and such. You could use those as well. So that's a form of an external antenna. And again, GMRS hooks up to those, so you're not stuck with just getting a handheld, and that's it. That most mobile units, I believe they're only 50 watts. That's the highest I've seen, and I'm not sure if they can get hooked up to an amplifier. I believe the answer is no. I personally have not put anything extra for GMRS here at the shack. Like I said, I have a couple handy talkies. I thought about building my own GMRS Yagi. I have seen people do it on Facebook groups. Um, Not necessarily building it, but I have seen pictures of people with their homemade Yagis for GMRS, and they're reporting that they can hit repeaters 40 or so miles away on like I said, on a handheld Yagi, like holding it about 4 or 5 feet off the ground, you know, pointing in a general direction, and they're using a handheld, which probably is no more than 5 watts, considering it's a, you know, handy talkie. Sounds right to me. I think it's capped at 50. Yeah, I think it is. I think it's capped at 50. And again, I personally don't have a mobile GMRS radio. Uh, would like to get one. Uh, Strictly for the fact that I do know, at least on the amateur side, I've actually used several, but I have a couple here at the shack that I use here at home. And, you know, they're 50, 50, 60 watts, depending on the 2 meter. But I'm gonna be honest, I've never metered it when it's on 70 centimeter. But I'm currently working off of a Ed Fog J pole. That's the J pole built inside the PVC pipe. You could buy those. I think they're still around $50, and that's just for the antenna, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I haven't metered one on 70 centimeters, so I don't know if it even gets a full 50 or 60, depending on the radio I'm using. Currently, it's an ICOM uh, IC, or may just be ICOM. I know it's ICOM 2720, and that's my dual band mobile I'm using in the shack right now, and it's 50 watts on 2 meter. And I want to say it says it bumps down to like 30 on 70 centimeters, which isn't bad. Don't get me wrong, but it is going into an omnidirectional. And I do have a couple of 440 repeaters around my area, and I can get okay reports. They're not the best. I'm readable, but you know, if something was to happen, I want to be about as crystal clear as I can. So I'm not trying to call you out, Anglin, but if you don't mind me asking, have you run with a mobile rig like that? And I'm sure you've probably got a handy talkie or two for GMRS. So, and if he's still in the room, KJ5HTK, Mr. Mike. I don't know if we've ever discussed if you have a GMRS, sir. All right, England, just HTs right now. Gotcha. Okay, cool. I have the TID radio or TID radio, however people say it. I believe it's the H3 model of Handy Talkie, and it's technically the quote GMRS radio. But I then learned that there is a mode that you could switch back and forth between GMRS and amateur radio bands on the same radio. I don't know why it didn't occur to me that that was possible, but on the side of the radio itself, it does say, I believe it says amateur band or amateur transceiver. So of course, when I get it delivered, I look at it and go, okay, I didn't order the ham one, but I'll take it. Um, and sure enough, charged the battery, turned it on. It's on GMRS frequencies. And after I had, played with it and did my review of it, and yeah, I did a review of it. I find out that there is a way to switch modes. And someone in my local club also told me the same thing that they found the video too. And they said, well, if you do this, this, and this, there's a way you could just switch the radio over to an amateur radio transceiver, which is cool. But I think the downside is every time you want to do that, you can, or excuse me, every time you do that and you go back and forth between amateur transceiver and a GMRS radio, you lose all the information. So if you're like me, and sometimes you're either through chirp or you want to spend your time manually programming a radio and you put in a lot of frequencies, imagine taking all that and just deleting it you know, in a single swipe of switching back over to GMRS because you got to use it for whatever. Michael Wolf. All right. Or you could put in a factory balls and you can talk on both, which is unlock the radio. Oh yeah, true, true. Um Again, I mentioned that a little bit earlier. I wasn't too familiar with other models that you can unlock. Baofeng was my first one I did. I know there is an unlock on a Quanshang. I believe it's the K5 model of Quanshang. Programming by chirp. Oh, okay. Gotcha. I did not know you could do that just by chirp. That's cool. I do know, like I said, I know about programming a radio, putting in the frequencies, but if you're talking about unlocking it, that's cool. I didn't know you could do that by chirp. Huh. Interesting. But yeah, there's another radio, a Quanshang, I believe it's K5 model. I have that one. And there's an unlock with that radio. There's another discussion I was having last night with a fellow club member that you unlock it via a firmware, but I also believe that there is something you have to do to the actual circuit board inside the Quanshang. And I have heard that you can then receive certain HF frequencies. I believe it's 10 and 20 meters. I can't remember. There's videos on it. So that's on my workbench next is to unlock and test on a Quanshang. And if I blow it up, it's it's $20. I think $25 for it, but we'll see. Anglin UV5R and the Radiodity. That would be looks like Golf Sierra 5 Bravo. Okay, and then I have an FT891 for HF. Okay, yeah, you got a Yates for your HF. Yeah, that's actually what I use. Is yeah, FT891. I have that and a tuner for my HF. Um, I do not have a Radiodity for a handheld. TID radio. Trying to remember all the brands I have. Baofeng, Quanshang, TID. There's one I'm missing. Redivis. I believe I have a Redivis one that is I have a mobile rig that's a Redivis for amateur, and there's one more I can't remember. Oh, I believe it's the Explorer QRZ, little dual bander. think that's the last one I have is that one. And Micro Wolf H3's got one too. Yeah, if you're talking about the yeah, Micro, if you're talking about the GMRS, if that's the one I'm thinking of, the TID radio, I believe mine is the H3. That's the one that it's GMRS slash amateur service band. If you just switch back and forth, I think you are correct. Yeah, I've still got plenty of things on the workbench I've got to do. One of the main things I have is an antenna build that I'm wanting to finish. I technically started it, but I kind of put it to the side. I'm trying to build myself a 70 centimeter Yagi for amateur band, of course. And then I have a GMRS Yagi. And then I am trying to build a Slinky 20 meter vertical antenna for HF. England, the GS5B can be programmed with Chirp or a phone app, so it was easy to unlock for GMRS. And I think it's advertised as being water resistant. That's one thing I don't do too often of is the testing for water, dust proof, all of that. I have watched several of those. Uh, I can't remember which radio it was specifically, but I know Randy did one. I think it was again probably a GMRS radio, and then someone else did one, and I believe it's for the Baofeng UV9R Pro, uh, because it is advertised as being one of the quote better weather resistant radios. It's an older model Baofeng. It doesn't have the color screen. It has the same one there as as the like UV5R BF8 HP. Just that simple little pixelated one. Micro TID radios H3. You can unlock your radio to manufacturers on YouTube. Okay, so it is the H3. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I figured it was one of those. I just couldn't remember which TID radio it was. And yes, the H3 quote GMRS. I like to call it flavor. It is what I got for the shack and for the property here. So I'll probably play around with that and unlocking it or switching it back and forth. Just again, just to test it out. I have another pair of GMRS radios that are Redivises, and I can't remember the model of them. They're very simple. There's no screen. It kind of reminds you of like a business radio. It's still larger. It's clunky, but the um, but the channels are just the dial at the top as you turn it, and the voice will tell you what channel you're on. Also, they're not repeater capable, um, on the model I'm speaking of. So you just get all the basic GMRS channels, which should still cover your FRS crossovers. They're just bulky and stout, I think, um compared to some of the smaller GMRS radios. Because I know there's some that are small, like that Baofeng. That one you just mentioned, Micro, the H3. It's a smaller form factor radio. Um, Again, probably about as big as that Baofeng there. And since both of y'all are on talking about having GMRS radios. Uh, you mind if I ask, do y'all usually communicate also via repeaters with y'all's, or usually people within whatever your community, your group, you just do radio contact or simplex rather, I guess. Around here, there's not a lot of. I don't do a lot of simplex around here. For amateur use, where my shack is located, I don't have a good directional up just to kind of be talking into the void on either 14652 or talking on 446. There's not a lot of traffic around here to be doing that. Angling, simplex for me, no repeaters. Gotcha. Okay. I believe I have one in my area, but we're talking at least 40 miles, 45 miles from me. And then, of course, the coverage area of that repeater is not very large. And so that's something that one of the guys in my club and I have been talking about, that uh, we may be putting our brains together about trying to get a GMRS repeater up to kind of share where the club is located in the small town it's in. But again, if we can find a tower tall enough, we should be able to maybe get it enough of a area coverage where it'll kind of reach my shack, because I'm about 25 around there. I'm about 25 miles uh, to the repeater, which is owned by my club. And with my omnidirectional, I can reach the repeater. Uh, Depending on the day, the signal report's great, or it's decent and readable, but it's a lot of noise. Uh, but for sure can go to my club's repeater with a Yagi. That's easy. So yeah, no, I feel you though about simplex. Or I guess I'm the opposite. So repeaters around here, as far as amateur use goes, hard for me to get simplex, and no repeaters around here for GMRS. Simplex mostly has just been uh, family. Pretty much, it's just family and around the property. England, Texas. Are you in East Texas? Uh, yeah. Without giving too much away, yes, I am actually located in the eastern part of the state. So and from what I was talking about a few minutes ago about no GMRS repeaters, that's the last time I checked repeater book, but that's been a while that I checked for GMRS. And I know there's a separate website you could sign up for, and the name's escaping me. So, but I do know there's another website, so you could, you know, um, I guess it's like not just sign up on, but I guess it's like a forum and everything else, so you can tag or geolocate where all the repeaters are and such. So. Um, I'm in Northeast Liberty County. I'm 35 miles from the Shark repeater. Okay, yeah, I am familiar with that repeater. I have seen that one before. Yeah, cool, cool. Northeast Liberty County. I am familiar where that county is. Liberty. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. I can. I kind of know where you're at now. Cool. I mean, that's a good little jump right there. 35 miles. If you don't mind me asking, what do you run as a rig um to get into that repeater? Directional, omni antenna. I'm gonna assume you have something more than an HT unless you're running with an HT and you just got a really good antenna. Don't get me wrong, it can be done. I actually did it for a while when I first started with my club. Like I said, it's about 25 ish. It's right on 25, between 25 and 30, depending on the map that I've looked at, or maybe it's repeater book because I think it goes in increments of 5 or increments of 10, somewhere in there. And for a while, that's the only way I got into my repeater was my old or excuse me, my Yaesu. I had a Yaesu 60R, I believe, handheld, and I had it on an Omni for a while. Then I was able to borrow a directional. That's how I was able to first talk to my club, and then finally, got the shack built and a proper antenna on a proper mast. England, Texas. I haven't made contact with it yet. Okay, gotcha. Um, yeah, like I said, it kind of depends on whatever kind of rig you're running with. You could definitely hit a repeater on an HT. If you're not within, I don't know, I guess if it's flat ground and you got a lot of obstacles between you and the repeater, 5 miles may even 5 miles may kill your signal with it. Excuse me, with a HT to get your repeater. If you got some form of an external antenna, definitely utilize it. Uh, whether it be an omnidirectional or a directional antenna. I got a 40 or a 50 footer. Wow, Roan tower need to get put up. Okay, yeah. Poof. Well, you got a good sized tower. I can tell you what, if you put 40, 50 feet up and then depending on what you've got on top of it for an antenna, yeah, you should be good. Um, well, I'll take that back. You should be good, and then you got to make sure you get some really good coax to go up about that far. Because depending on where your shack's located in reference to the tower, you're probably going to have a good run of coax. So let's see, that's 50, 40 or 50. I'm going to take the higher. So we're going 50 feet down from at least the antenna down. So that's 50 feet. So unless your shack's super close to your tower, you're going to need minimum 100 feet. And on 2 meter or even 440, you're definitely going to probably want LMR 400 coax or something better, which is probably going to be running into like heliax, which can be a pretty penny depending on how much you need. But that's the best stuff for super long runs. There's someone I know too in my club. I think well, last year his tower got raised from 70 feet to 100 feet. And at the very top is a Tram 1481 dual band antenna, which I think the gain on that for 440 is insane for an omnidirectional. I want to say it's like 9.1 dB, could be 10.1 dB. And then 2 meter, I believe, is like 7 point something dB. So at 100 feet, he's got some reach, but I can't remember what kind of coax he has. I've been there a couple times. But I'm trying to remember. I think it's Heliax going up because his shack is about, goodness, about 200 feet. Um, yeah, I think from from his tower to his shack window is 200 feet. Um, yeah, about 200 feet. So I think he's got Heliax up the whole thing. So like 300 feet of Heliax. And that was probably a pretty penny. A lot of area between it and me is a river bottom. Oh, so I think I can make the trip. It and me is a river bottom. Okay. So you're not flat. So you may have not really the high ground, but yeah, you may be a little bit up there. So it may be easier for you to hit. Not sure. And thanks for the recommendation. Yeah, man, of course. I hope it works out for you. I mean, yeah, just like a definitely would like a follow up on that. So if you ever catch me around again on live or you see anything, I am definitely going to start doing some more antenna stuff. I'd like to get a build video, at least one or two build video ups on the channel. I think my current one I only have for an antenna is my tape measure. Yeah, yeah, made. But again, I got them on the workbench. I just like to make more videos of those. So for sure, if you get something up or you find out something works, I'd definitely like to know. You can, all right, let's see here. Think we'll hang around a couple more minutes tonight. Yeah, if you've been in here and you've been hanging around this whole time, I appreciate you. Always like the questions. I like the comments. Uh, just like the discussion here. Always trying to help each other out, and it's kind of the only way we learn sometimes. And to those that are watching, if you happen to be subscribed or we do have memberships now for the channel, but if you happen to be subscribed and you watch my channel, I appreciate it again. Recently, in the last few days, just made 900 subs. That's amazing. I did not think that was going to be possible when this channel started. I just made a few videos and threw them out there as I thought they would help somebody, and always helps me learn if I can reiterate what I've learned and pass it on. So it's been mostly a learning experience for me, but I'm very grateful for where the channel has gotten. And yeah, it's been quite the journey. I think my 1 year mark will be in the second or third week of January. So it has been a ride for sure. But I'm very grateful. And it's all thanks to you all that watch, subscribe, leave the comments, and interact. All right. We got any more commentary or questions? Anything anybody wants to throw out? Right now, with the live streams, we kind of just roll with it thus far. This is the second live stream of the channel, so still trying to get a routine here for these. Nothing I have come across thus far is super prophetic in any way. I think everything I have tinkered with and experimented with, you could find a video on it, and you may find the same result, or you may find a different result on it, or excuse me, how the experiment works. But yeah, you can find them out there. The information's out there. But I guess it just reiterates that some things work. and I am personally thinking about doing a maybe a live unboxing or review for a future live. I also would not mind doing a live programming of a radio. I know that seems to be a thing sometimes. Chirp and other software is great, but I'm a big proponent of learning how your radio works for the times that you will have to program it manually. Again, in those emergency situations, especially if we do hit or if you do hit a grid down in your area, learning how to go back and do things manually is going to be what it will take to probably get things up and running again. So, all right. And with that, guys, I think we will go ahead and shut her down for the evening. Appreciate everybody. If you tuned in, if you just kind of jumped in, you just watched this live, if you'd like to, you are more than welcome. I actually invite you to subscribe to the channel, follow along, leave the comments, and just reach out. And with that, I will go ahead and bid everyone a good evening, 73s, and Godspeed to you all.